Welcome to the Milsurf Mike channel. I know I haven't made a video in 4 to 6 weeks. That's because I haven't been out shooting much and I don't really have much footage to make military history videos with. So I finally made it out the other day and I'm finally going to start making some videos again. But before then, I'm going to have a couple weeks here where I'm ranking World War I military rifles. So this week's going to kind of be the lower tier rifles, and next week's video will be the upper tier rifles. Um, Hopefully not too many people get butthurt over my choices, but I think most people, at least in the United States, probably agree with my assessments on these rifles. So you're going to have to excuse me as I refer to some notes here so I don't end up rambling as I tend to do. First of all, I'm going to go over rifles that I own and that I have access to, which is basically the major powers. Now I don't have access to a lot of the esoteric rifles like Seeing Arsenal or Forgotten Weapons do. So, I don't have any means to review a Serbian Mauser or something like that. And also, some of my criteria, just some of the things that go through my mind when I'm ranking these rifles are action and smoothness of the action, the feed system, and the quality of the clips. That also has a lot to do with these rifles. Ammo, caliber has a lot to do with it, and rim versus not rim, as well as rifle length. Because going into World War One, most nations went in with these long infantry length rifles, and you can see that I definitely have a bias toward the shorter rifles by the time these 2 weeks are up. So before I get into the lowest tier rifles, I'm going to go ahead and talk about three rifles here. I'm going to just kind of put in the meh category that neither belong on the lower tier or the upper tier. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Carcano M1891 infantry rifle. I made a video that dropped on October 18th, 2020. I'm going to go ahead and put the dates on these so you can go back and watch some of these videos if you want a little more information on them. I do put some research into these, so I'd appreciate if you go back and watch if you haven't seen them already. Um, the reason this is kind of meh is the Carcano action. It's not bad, but it's not good. It definitely isn't Mauser quality, but it isn't bad either. The Italians adopted something they could afford, which that is commendable. They didn't want to be early adopters and have to adopt something 2 years or 10 years down the road because there was a huge improvement. But the early 1890s came and they finally decided they had to adopt something that was halfway modern, and they actually made a not bad choice. Now, one thing I don't like about it is the Mannlicher feed system. I, I don't, I like stripper clip systems more. Bad thing I don't like about the Mannlicher system is that, you have this hole down here, which in World War One especially allows dirt to get in, and you have the cartridges are in the clip that you just put the whole clip in there, and that's just something else to get jammed in there. So it is quicker feeding, but to me it also causes more problems. And I know this was a concern early on, but I don't know if it really came to fruition. But this magazine, this unprotected magazine down here, was something that they did worry about early on, taking damage. So that is one thing I don't like about this. Um, Also, on the Mannlicher clip system, a lot of it had to do with the quality of the clips. Now, some like the original Mannlicher rifles, which I'll talk about here in a minute, they had really high quality clips, but they were also super expensive. The Gewehr 88 commission rifle, which is another rifle that'll be talked about, had really cheap clips that had a tendency to malfunction. So, and then there were some that were kind of in between, like the Berthiers. So this did have one of the cheaper clips out of the Mannlicher systems. The good thing, and that's the main reason that this rifle didn't end up on the bottom tier, is the caliber, the 6.5 millimeter caliber cartridge. Now, when you're approaching intermediate cartridges in World War One, I mean that to me that gives you a huge advantage. They started out when World War One started. Most countries had either 30 or 32 caliber bullets in their cartridges, and they just wanted that stopping power. Whereas the countries with the smaller cartridges, gives you ability to carry more into battle, and the lighter recoil, I think, gives you a better ability to place shot on target. Now, you might not quite have the stopping power, but you're still getting hit by a rifle round. So anyway, this is one of my kind of meh rifles. And you see how long this is too. So that's one of my meh rifles. Next up on my meh rifles, let me look at my notes there, is the Berthier. Now, this particular one is the M1907/15 with the M16 magazine, M16 magazine conversion. Made a video on this May 18th, 2019. A lot of these videos have been demonetized, so it might not even come up in your searches. So you might have to be a little more specific in your searches to search for my video on this. The reason this wasn't the main rifle in World War I for the French was the Lebel rifle was already adopted, and they'd made several million of them, so they didn't want to go back and make a whole bunch more. Plus, the French always had this idea that they were going to have a semi-auto rifle, so they didn't really want to make a whole bunch more bolt action rifles. So the Berthier started out as a cavalry carbine. Sorry, pronunciation police. Then it was kind of a colonial stopgap, and then it kind of became the main rifle in the trenches when the main French army started seeing these colonial soldiers come in from like Cameroon, having rifles that could be loaded faster than the Lebel. Since you kind of had the clip system, one advantage over the Mannlicher rifles is this actually did have a cover there to keep the dirt out. So this does have an advantage over that. Although you do have a pretty wide opening right here too, so that advantage may be negated. One thing about the clip on the Berthier rifle was one concern that Berthier himself had was cost of the clip. He figured that may get his rifle not considered for adoption. So he knew about the problem with the commission rifle clips from Germany, but he also realized that the good clips from the Mannlicher rifles in Austria were real expensive. So he actually came up with spring steel could be made in one press motion, and this was actually later adopted by the U.S. for the Garand clips too. So he's actually, and I think these ended up being they were very cheap to make. So they were good quality and they were cheap. Again, this is a long rifle, and as I said, infantry length rifles are going to get marked down in my mind when I'm ranking these rifles. So this is kind of another one of those meh rifles that, I'd definitely take it over my bottom four, but I wouldn't want them over anything in the top rifles that are going to be in next week's video. The original Berthiers were only 3 rounds. Like I said, this has the M16 conversion, but the original Berthiers only had 3 rounds. But the thing is, reloading the 3-round Berthiers were quicker than reloading a Lebel with an 8-round tube magazine. So, and then also, I kind of knock the French rifles for the cartridge because it's an 8mm rimmed cartridge. But I'll get into that a little bit more when I talk about the Lebel. And then finally, on my meh rifles, I almost put this as one of the worst because in my video that dropped on December 20th, 2020, I am not kind to this. This is the Mannlicher M1891 infantry rifle. In general, really, it does seem like a solid rifle, but the straight pull action is not that smooth, so I do knock it for that. Actually, the only straight pull action that I like is the Swiss rifles, but they were not a belligerent in World War I, so they aren't considered, and neither are the Swede rifles for this. Like I said, in general, they seem to be well built, but the straight pull can get sticky. I was told in the comments several times in that video that perhaps I should try the 8x50 round as opposed to the later 8x56. because it seemed to work better then. 8x50 is a little harder to get, and I don't reload, so that is kind of a detriment. So I don't know. Maybe this rifle would get ranked a little higher if I had the 8x50 round that was used in World War One as opposed to the 8x56, which was adopted in the early 30s. And as I said in my video, make sure that has the S on it before you shoot the 8x56 rounds out of it. The clip is very well made, but it was also very expensive, and the Austro-Hungarians, really probably couldn't afford that. This rifle, again, probably suffered from the reputation of the Austro-Hungarian army, and I go into that in my Mannlicher videos. So please watch that. Like I said, that dropped on December 20th, 2020. Now it is time to get into the lower tier videos, which these will be the 4 worst rifles. 4th worst rifle, the 3-line rifle, model 1891. This video was dropped on April 5th, 2020, the Mosin Nagant. In reality, if I just went by rifles that were available that you could pick up, this might actually make the meh list, but one thing that really knocks this down into the worst is that although the examples you get aren't bad, the rifles produced in Russia, let's just say the quality control made modern Remington look great. You never knew what you were going to get if you got a rifle in the field. So that's the reason this kind of gets knocked down. I mean, it definitely isn't the greatest rifle in the world. In reality, if I had to choose between this one and the Carcano, of my examples, I would probably actually choose this over the Carcano just because it is charger fed instead of stripper clip fed. Even though it has a full power round over the 6.5 millimeter round. But like I said, this gets knocked down because of quality control issues in Russia during World War One. So that'd be the number 4 worst rifle of World War One. Next would be my Gewehr 88 commission rifle. Now I have not made a video on this yet. There will be a video made in the future. I plan on doing a series on German rifles at some point in the next couple years. Kind of like I've hit British videos I hit British rifles a couple years ago. I hit French rifles a couple years ago. Last year I hit Soviet rifles pretty hard. So I'm going to hit German rifles at some point, and there will be a video on this sometime in the future. But I mean, this just has just about everything bad on it almost. I mean, granted, this rifle was made in a quick response to the French having a smokeless powder rifle out in 1886. This is 1888. The bad thing is the Germans kind of stupidly left the Mauser brothers out of the design, and this is a commission rifle. So it has the Mannlicher style magazine. It actually has one of the worst Mannlicher style clips. I mean, see how weak that is. I don't know, this barrel jacket kind of makes it heavier. I don't know, it's something I'm going to have to go into when I actually make a video on this rifle. But there was a reason that this rifle was replaced within 10 years by one of the best rifles, the Gewehr 98. So to me, this is, out of the rifles I've had experience with, this is the number 3 worst rifle. The number 2 worst rifle would be the Fusil Lebel, or the Fusil model 1886, the Lebel rifle. Now, and my video on this was on May 14th, 2019. And I implore you, if you haven't seen that video, please watch that. That's one of the videos that I put the most time into, especially for the length of the video it is. And it got demonetized, so it doesn't end up in search engines, or in searches too much. So if you haven't seen that, please go watch that video. But this was revolutionary because of the round, the 8mm Lebel. And the thing that was revolutionary about that was the smokeless powder, as well as the, they used a jacketed bullet. But it was mainly revolutionary because of the smokeless powder. The problem with the round is instead of making a new case, they decided to save money and they necked down a raw case, which made it rimmed, and everything that used the 8mm Lebel round had to be curved. Now, this isn't curved because this has another thing that I would knock this down, and that is the tube magazine on that. So, I mean, granted, this holds 8 rounds, but once you expend those 8 rounds, you are going to take a lot of time to reload that. And if you're in a firefight, in reality, it may become a single shot rifle out of that. So this knocks it way down on the list. And really, it would probably be the number one worst if it wasn't for, well, my number one worst rifle, which I'll get to in a minute. But the tube magazine and the fact that this thing was pretty much antiquated by the time it was adopted. One thing I gave the Italians praise on was kind of by not being an early adopter, they didn't have to keep adopting new rifles. Well, the French being an early adopter, that kind of bit them because they had millions of these built, which kept them from trying to make improvements. And they also had the belief that there was a semi-auto rifle on the horizon, so that kept them from really wanting to improve their bolt-action rifle. But their hand was kind of forced in World War One to make the Berthier into a full-length rifle as opposed to the just a cavalry carbine or colonial stopgap. So again, number 2 worst rifle, the Lebel 1886. And the number 1 worst rifle, the Ross rifle. My video on this was dropped on July 28th, 2018. And I believe the video is called The Nickelback of Rifles, because this thing sucks. Caveat, this is a Mark II and not the Mark III that was used in World War I. So there is quite a bit of difference, but when it came to function, it still didn't really help them out in World War I. The Ross was actually created as a marksman rifle. It was made from the experiences of the Boer War, where you're shooting at people from 600-700 yards away. So this was made as a marksman rifle and not as a rough and tumble rifle to be in the trenches during the war. But it got adopted as a main rifle mainly because of cronyism in the Canadian government. And even when the rifle was jamming up, getting soldiers killed, the cronyism still kept going until finally, a general finally said, no, we're just going to use British Enfields. So this was adopted because of cronyism. And again, it has my complaints. The straight pull, I don't like that. Technically it's supposed to be faster, but there's just too many problems there. There's too many moving parts in the bolt. So I don't like straight pull. Like I said, the only straight pull I like is the Swiss straight pulls. And also on top of that, you have a rimmed cartridge going in there. Now, granted, it is charger fed, but still, it is a rimmed cartridge, which you have to deal with rim lock. And rim lock with a straight pull, that can just get you jammed up, especially when you get any dirt in there. So, I mean, this is just a horrible rifle overall for wartime use. Now, granted, it still got used as a sniper rifle afterwards, because like I said, it is a marksman rifle. So, I would actually have no problem taking this thing deer hunting, because it is one of my more accurate milsurp rifles. But, as I said again, it was put into service due to cronyism, and it got a lot of Canadian soldiers killed in World War I. So, number 1 worst rifle, the Ross rifle, the Nickelback of rifles. So anyway, I'm going to end that video here. Tune in next week. I'm going to have the 5 best rifles. As you can probably ascertain some of what's going to be on that list. Please know where your elected officials and the groups that claim to represent you stand on the Second Amendment. Please join the GOA and get $5 off your membership with the link in my description. If you like my content, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Engagement does help me in the algorithms. Also, please check out my Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and who I support on Patreon. Thank you for watching, and as always, have a great day.